Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. Getting ready to do one of the final parts to the build tutorial project that we've been working on. And this time around, I'm going to go in, I'm going to tape off the fenders and the front and rear fenders and get ready to spray some Tamiya XF69 NATO Black on the running board area. And what I want to do is, I was looking at the way this thing is designed, and the running board actually stops short of going all the way to the fender well here. So I want to tape that off, and it also stops just short back here. So I want to tape that off also. And this vertical piece that you see right here, we'll slip the body on. I'll show you what I'm talking about. We slide the body down into place where it goes, and you can see that we have that white band right underneath of the rocker panels. I actually want to get rid of that. I want to kind of darken that area in and create a shadow in there with the black, and it'll add a little bit of interest to the side of the car also. So we're going to go in and do some taping, and we're going to do a little bit of airbrushing work on this step. I did get the underneath sprayed, and if you notice, I kind of did a little bit of more of a dot technique on it. And what that ends up doing is, let me set it down here, and I'm going to take the chassis and flip it over. And we'll show you roughly what that looks like when it's going to be assembled. You can see the contrast between the racing white chassis and the kind of looks like an undercoated look to the underside of the body. And what I'll do is just probably go back in and touch this up a little bit in a couple areas. I see a couple areas that's a little light up here in the fender wells. I'll go back in and touch them up real quick. The running boards will all be painted, like this lip right here will be painted the same color as the running board when we wrap it around. And I'll probably continue that line on the inside and paint this section here the same color as the top of the running board, just to kind of give it a little bit of, interest, I guess you could say. But overall, it's going to look pretty good together. So let's get into how we're going to tape off the body. And I'm only going to do one side of this, and then I'll do the other side off camera. But I'll show you all the steps that I go through to tape this off. So we're going to use the Tamiya 1/4 inch or 6mm masking tape. And we're going to tear off a couple pieces of it here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start right back here in the corners. And we're going to slide that back as far as we can get it back with that factory, or with the edge that we tore it off at. And what that'll do is keep the overspray off the vertical part of the fender. And we're just taking the toothpick and we're smoothing that down right there where we know it looks nice and tight down against the running board. And then we're going to lift up this side here, and we're going to follow that running board around so we get a nice clean line around the car. And we're not worried about folding this tape down right here. We just want our line to be nice and clean at the running board. And I got to pull this back up again and get another little spot right where I want it. And we're looking pretty good there. We'll just wrap that around the corner just a little bit. Don't wrap it all the way around. You don't need to do that. So we've got that piece into place. And now I'm just going to come in and actually add a piece right over top of that, just to protect the upper paint surface and make sure that we don't get any paint on the actual fenders. And when you get into masking things like this, normally that's all I would put on the model as far as masking for what I do. But for the newer guys out there that's newer to airbrushing and building models and things like that, we're going to go ahead and add a piece of the Tamiya tape up across the top of the fenders, just to make sure that we don't get any overspray or anything up onto the actual painted fender. So nothing hard, just go ahead and run it forward like that. You don't need to burnish this section down real good. because you really don't want it to stick all that great up there where you're just trying to keep some overspray off of the fender. That reduces your chance of pulling the paint up or something like that. So, but where you do want to make sure you stick it down is where it meets the lower masking tape that we've already put on. Make sure you get it stuck down good there, so nothing blows up underneath of the masking tape. And then we're going to tear off one more piece of that and put over the side of the fender here. And we're going to go over this section right here. And like I say, you don't have to stick this down real hard. You can just kind of, leave it sort of like that. I mean, just as long as it stays down right in this area here, this is the main area you're trying to protect. Now, like I said, we don't want the actual running board to go all the way forward onto this fender. So I'm going to take a piece of Tamiya now, and we're going to stand this up right where we want our cut line to be on the front of the running board. We're going to get that nice and vertical, and then we're going to wrap that piece under the body and tuck it in at the top. So what we'll end up with is a taped off section that looks like that right there. That pretty much takes care of the front part. And now we're just going to do the same thing back here at the rear fender. We're going to go in and get the tape down as close to the running board as we can get it. And this may not be the best camera view here, but I've got to see what I'm doing, so bear with me on that. We've got the tape down there real close to the fender, or real close to the running board. And yep, that looks pretty good. We're going to smooth that down with the toothpick. And we're just going to lightly roll it around the edge right there. We're not trying to stick it down real hard in that area. And then we're going to do it again the same way we did in the front. We're just going to overlap that piece. And again, smooth it down so nothing blows up underneath the end of it when you're spraying. But when you're spraying with about 15 pounds of pressure and you've got the paint flow down on the airbrush, you shouldn't have to worry about getting overspray up underneath of the tape. But just, pay attention to it and make sure you get it burnished down good in those bottom areas, and it'll save you a lot of headaches later on, just in case. Now we're going to take the piece of masking tape and we're going to tape our fender off here. And like I said, we're not looking for anything special with this. I mean, it doesn't have to be exactly pretty. All you're doing is just making sure you don't get overspray on your finished paintwork. So we got that taped off now. Now we don't want the running board to come all the way back onto the rear fender. So we're going to do the same thing, another little piece of Tamiya tape. And we're going to pick where we want the running board to end. And I've actually got to add one more piece in here because this running board at the rear has a little bit of an angle on the end of it where it meets the fender. So we're going to put that piece in first, and then we're going to come in and do the final piece to cap off the very end of the running board. And I'm trying to get these vertical. You could run this all the way back and paint the bottom edge of the fenders black. But what I'm doing here is just trying to, like I say, add a little bit of interest to it. And we're going to pull that piece around on the inside of the body. And basically, when we're done taping, everything is going to look like this right here. We'll show you the front first. There's the front, and then we'll move to the back, and you can see the little curve that I put in it back there. So now we are ready to start spraying the actual running board area. And I have, like I say, the Tamiya NATO Black in the airbrush. And I'm going to do my test with the airbrush here. I got a little bit more paint flow than what I want. You want to keep the paint flow down on this area because you want to be very light with the paint. Not down that much. You want something to come out of the airbrush. And still not getting anything yet. But we'll get her hit set here. There we go. I think the tip's a little dry on the airbrush. Yep, that's what we got. We got a little bit of a dry tip because of the acrylics. So what I'm going to do is grab my 91% rubbing alcohol, and we're going to put a little bit on a Q-tip here. And we're going to take the Q-tip and come in on the front of the airbrush here. And we're just going to clean off the very front of the airbrush, right where the needle comes through. And let me get that dried off, and then we will be back to getting ready to spray this. I should have tuned my airbrush up before I started the video. Oh well. We'll get it figured out here in a minute. Much better. There we go. Now we can turn the paint down here a little bit and get this working the way we want it. There we go. That's what they call dry tip when you're spraying acrylics. You'll have that where you have to go back in and clean the tip off because it will actually stop spraying altogether, which is what we ran into there. And I'm trying to set this so I've got very little bit of paint flow really coming out of the airbrush. I'm trying to keep my overspray to a very minimum, and I'm not trying to put a whole lot of paint down at one time. So we've got the airbrush all set. Now we're going to go in and start spraying. So we're going to start up here on the vertical part. And this is all hidden up here, but I'm just kind of working from here down just to get a good even coat on everything. If I've got a hidden panel like that, I like to start in that area and then work myself down. And then we're going to go in and spray the bottom of it here. And I was going to leave these the body color, but I thought, you know what, if I go in and spray it with this NATO black, it's going to give us a variation in our black tones from the flat black we've used, the Vallejo black, the semi-gloss black from Tamaya. So it's going to kind of break it up and like I say, give us a little bit of interest, and that's what we're after. Like I say, I'm putting down very, very little bit of paint. Just trying to work everything in, blend it all real well. And you may have to twist the airbrush a little bit to get all the ribs or, you know, whatever part that you're actually spraying. But if you're working on this kit here, it would be the back side of those ribs. You kind of got to twist the airbrush a little bit. And you may have to turn the paint up here a little bit more. And what we're doing now is just trying to get the back side of the ribs so you get a nice even coverage on everything. There we go. We're looking good there. And once you get everything done on the top side and it's all looking good there, and you're happy with the results of it, you can go ahead. We've got the tape returned right here on the bottom edge. You can go ahead and very lightly spray that edge and also this little section of the running board right here, and you can do this all freehand. This doesn't have to be, you know, super precise and clean, especially on this model, because it'll be mounted to the display board and you're not going to see any of this. But you can go in and do this freehand and not, you know, make it look terrible. So there we go. We have the running board sprayed with our Tamiya NATO Black. So now we're going to go in and just reverse our procedures on our masking tape that we put on. So basically what that means is we're going to start on the last piece that we put on each section. And in this case, it was that vertical piece that we ran underneath. We're going to start with that one. And the next piece is the one that we put on the outside of the fender to tape that off. And then the next piece was the one that we put down first on the fender to keep overspray off of it. And then we'll move on to the two pieces of Tamiya tape that we taped off the fender with to create our edge between the fender and the running board. And then when you get to the rear, you just want to do that same procedure. And on this one, we did this piece of tape right here. There we go. We'll get a hold of that. And we'll pull that off. And then we'll grab a hold of our Tamiya tape down here and we'll slowly pull that back. Just like that. And that's what it looks like when it's done. Let's hold it up here, let you get a shot of the running boards, and you can see where I started and stopped it there. And we'll go ahead and set the body down into place just to show you the design that I was looking for on this particular body. And that's what it looks like when it's done. You can see we got a little bit of color right here on the fender, a little bit of color here, but then the running board picks up. And we did that vertical piece right back in there, black, and it gives us a little bit of interest in the model, and it changes the tones of the black that we've been using on the, you know, other parts of the car. So that's all there is to going back in and spraying the running boards after the car has been painted. Nothing to it. Now you could have left that taped and went back in and put a coat of either flat clear or semi-gloss clear, something like that on it. But on this particular build, I'm just going to leave that as is, nice flat finish. I just won't put any polishing compounds or rub across that or anything like that. So there we go. We're going to get the other side taped up off of camera. We'll get that finished. And then pretty much all we have left is the bumpers, the exhaust and the exhaust tips, and the license plate frame. And one other thing, I guess while we're on this video, and we're only about 18 minutes here, we'll go ahead and do another part of this real quick to show you something else you can add a little bit of interest to the model with. And that's around our headlight lenses that we put in. And this is another good area for the Tamiya panel line accent color. So we're going to shake that up. And we're going to go around. And you don't want a whole lot on the brush. So kind of, you know, try to wick off as much as you can on the brush, because you just want a very little bit. And what we want to do is we just want to come in at the very top edge here of the headlight. And we're just going to touch this. And we're going to let it flow around. And if you get a little bit of excess, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Let it dry, and we'll come back in and clean it off later. But what you're kind of trying to replicate here is sort of like a gasket or a shadow. It gives you a little bit more depth on the headlights than just, you know, not doing it. It's one of the little tricks that I've been doing for a while, my models, especially my big trucks and stuff like that. And people ask me all the time at the shows, you know, how I do my headlight treatments. And doing a wash on them like this is one of the tricks to it. And like I say, we've got a little bit extra in there. That's fine. We've got a little bit on the lens. We've got a little bit on the body work, or actually on the paint. We're not worried about that. We're going to let that set. We're going to let it dry. And then I have found here very recently a little trick to getting this panel line accent color off without using enamel thinner. So let's see if we can get a shot of what we did around the headlights. There you go. You can see the black around the headlights. That'll tone down a little bit. And then when we come back in the next episode, I'll show you how to get the excess off without hurting your paint. So stay tuned for that. So that's all we've got for right now. We'll be back. We probably got 2 or 3 more videos to go, something like that. And this series will be wrapped up. So again, if you have any questions or concerns on anything we did on this step or any of the other ones, leave me a comment or a question on the video. We'll be more than glad to try to help you out and answer your questions on anything. So that's all we've got for this one. As always, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.